Welcome, football fans, to your NFL Week 17 Sunday reaction. And what a glorious NFL Sunday it was. Not only did the Vikings make a statement about maybe, just maybe, being the best team in the NFC. More on that in a little bit. But the most important, biggest thing to happen today, the New England Patriots are rightfully picking first in the 2025 NFL Draft. At least for now. Only the Patriots can mess this up after what was a miserable, brutal Saturday, watching the Patriots fall to the Chargers in humiliating, embarrassing fashion. Sunday, we saw the one and only great aura Drew mother effing Lock. Guns up, baby. Bam. Drew Lock, baby. Ice in the veins, Drew Lock. Looking like Eli Manning in Super Bowl 42. Defeating the Indianapolis Colts in a game that Giants fans could not believe before their eyes. They could not believe that the G-Men won this game out of all of the games. They won this one. But I thank you, Drew Lock. I love you, Drew Lock. I always have. You're my man. You're my ride or die, Drew. It brings a tear to my eye. Drew Lock not only knocking that absolutely phony franchise, the Indianapolis Colts, and their AFC Championship banner. You can wipe your tears with that banner, baby. The Colts are out. Not only did Drew Lock help Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty, Jamar Chase, and the Cincinnati Bengals perhaps maybe open the door for a playoff spot. Not only that. No, not only that, but Drew Lock ensured that the New England Patriots are rightfully at number one. Number one, baby. Let's go, Drew Lock. And I said on the broadcast, baby, that if the New England Patriots do what they must, which is lose on purpose to the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen or no Josh Allen, Mitch Trubisky or no Mitch Trubisky, lose to the Buffalo Bills. I don't care if you have to run out of your own end zone. Lose to the Buffalo Bills. As long as the Patriots lose to the Bills, I will buy a Drew Lock jersey live on this channel. I will rep that Drew Lock jersey in my NFL Draft live stream for 2025 as the Patriots most likely trade that pick. Maybe pick Travis Hunter, some other great football player. I will rep a Drew Lock jersey on that show. So thank you, Drew Lock. That was absolutely the best game, result, moment of the day. And that's where I want to start. Welcome to your review for Week 17, Sunday. It was a fun day. Gronk, spike the like button if you haven't already. Jabroni. And let's get to it. 45-33, the G-Men. I wouldn't even believe you if you told me the New York Giants scored 45 points in an NFL professional football game. After last week, I think they scored 7, and they gave the ball to the other team for more touchdowns, the Atlanta Falcons, than they scored. How embarrassed must you be to be an Indianapolis Colts fan? And the funny thing is, you can blame Joe Flacco, you can blame Anthony Richardson, you can blame your quarterback, but at the end of the day, the score is the score. You lost 45-33. You didn't lose 9-7. Gus Bradley's defense that I've been saying, Colts fans, Shane Steichen, pal, wake up, open your eyes, get new glasses. Your buddy Mitch has been telling you, Shane, that this guy, Gus Bradley, is running a defense from 2013. You got to get rid of the man. He's a jabroni. Gus Bradley seems like a good fella. Nice bald head. But sometimes you got to move on just because he's your friend, bro. His defense lost you this game. His defense lost you a potential playoff spot. Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson, 33 points. So I'm not going to sit here and blame Joe Flacco. Yes, he had 2 interceptions, but he also had 2 touchdowns, 330 yards, and 26 completions. Neither could Anthony Richardson achieve 330 yards and 26 completions. Are you kidding me? Not even a 90 passer rating is likely from Anthony Richardson. And Jonathan Taylor also had 125 yards rushing on 32 carries. That's an effort. Far little too late there, Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if you know, but the fantasy season, Jonathan Taylor, Mr. JT, it runs from week 1 through week 14. And then if you don't have enough fantasy points, if you don't have enough fantasy wins, Justin Timberlake, you can't actually make the fantasy playoffs. So just to clarify, Jonathan Taylor, maybe you should run for 125 yards when your team in fantasy actually needs it, you know? Just think about it. Just saying. But at the end of the day, Drew Lock, the dancing Drew Lock, my boy, the man, the myth, the legend, number 2 on the field, number 1 in my heart, Drew Lock, 17 for 23, 309 yards, full of dimes, 4 touchdowns, a 155.3 passer rating. No, I am not kidding you. I will repeat. 17 for 23, 309 yards, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 flipping touchdowns from Drew Joseph Lock. I don't know if that's his middle name, but I made it up. 155 passer rating. Malik Neighbors. My goodness, what a performance. Put on a show. He put on such a show that after watching Sanders, the one at Colorado, not Dion, he said, you know what? I really don't want that kid to be my quarterback. I'm going to put up 171 yards and 2 touchdowns so that it doesn't happen. How about that, Dion? In fact, the Giants only had 15 first downs in this game because many of their touchdowns were explosives from Malik Neighbors. The Colts had 10 more first downs, 25. The Colts had more yards. The Colts did throw more interceptions, though. Drew Lock did not throw an interception. He kept those guns in the holster. You know what I'm saying? The Giants also had 7 penalties for 94 yards, and yet the Colts still found a way to lose. Because you know why? Because they're losers. They've always been losers. Thankfully, I don't have to watch them in the playoffs. G-Men. They finally repaid the Patriots. The Patriots did the favor by putting them over at not just one Super Bowl, but 2 Super Bowls. We gave you 2 Super Bowl rings. You finally repaid the favor. So thank you very much, Giants. Thank you very much, Drew Lock, Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, Tyrone Tracy, everybody involved in your effort. I appreciate you all. Darius Slayton, Smith Marset for your kick return. Brian Daboll, former Patriot, helping the Patriots. Probably knows he's going to get fired, wants to go to New England. No wonder he won this game. Graham Gano, you absolutely beautiful human. 45-33. The Giants win. Now, once we get past the greatest news of the day, and I have to make an entire video about the Patriots holding the first pick. Now, that being said, the Patriots still have to lose next week, which, given Gerard Mayo being an absolute imbecile, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. So let's just wait. I'm not going to embarrass myself by making a video before the Patriots actually confirmed have the first overall pick. So I'm going to wait until the Patriots finish against the Buffalo Bills and see how that goes. And it will rather have a very positive spin or a negative spin about what I think the Patriots should do in that draft. That being said, there were a lot of games today that I don't even want to talk about. So, yes, NFL fans, Jacksonville fans, Tennessee fans, Raider fans, Saints fans, Browns fans. I don't want to talk about your teams. I'm sorry. I've talked about them for 16 weeks. Going on 17 weeks, I absolutely find no worth in discussing them. So I will quickly say the score and maybe one thing about the game. The Raiders defeated the Saints 25-10. Aiden O'Connell is a stud. Amir Abdullah, still doing it. Jacksonville, 20-13 over the Titans. Brian Thomas Jr. continues to be a stud. Mac Diddley Jones keeps on winning. The Miami Dolphins defeated the Cleveland Browns in a game that absolutely no human on earth watched except for Kevin Durant. Tyler Huntley was fine. DTR is the worst quarterback on planet Earth. And the Dolphins still are alive for a playoff spot. Those are games that I didn't care for. Now let's get to a couple games that I did watch a little bit of. First, the Philadelphia Eagles, 41-7. The Eagles smashed the Dallas Cowboys in a bounce-back spot with Kenny Pickett and also, is it McKee at quarterback? Pickett ended his day 10 for 15, 143 and a touchdown, an efficient day for him with one of the wildest plays I've ever seen in my life, where if you guys didn't see it, look it up on YouTube or on Twitter or X or whatever they call it nowadays. He had the ball in his hand and he literally did a spinorama front flip and sacked himself. That was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life. I think that Jamarcus Russell couldn't have even achieved that. Cooper Rush is the story of the game for me. He was absolutely, utterly atrocious and may have cost me a fantasy championship because I was playing against the Eagles defense that had 19 points. Cooper Rush went 15 for 28, 147 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Also, I feel sorry for any human that had the Colts defense in fantasy. I really very much apologize. That being said, they took one for the team right on the chin. Cooper Rush, 50.7 passer rating. Very, very, very bad stuff. Rico Dowdle did end up with 100 yards. Congratulations to you, sir, despite losing by 34 points. You put forth an effort. Saquon Barkley, absolute specimen. 31 carries for 167 yards in this game, 5.4 yards per carry, and the Eagles were just physically dominating the Philadelphia Eagles were physically dominating the Dallas Cowboys in the second half, and Saquon was tearing them up. Devontae Smith had a huge game, 6 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown had a relatively quiet game. He did have 1 touchdown that actually came from McKee. What else? The Eagles' defense bounced back after having a really bad game, mostly because of the turnovers. I actually felt like Dallas was moving the ball a little bit early in the game, especially in that first quarter, but Cooper Rush rather was throwing the ball to the other team for a touchdown. They were fumbling the ball, or he was again throwing the ball to the other team. So the Dallas Cowboys ended up with 268 yards. They actually only had 1 sack, did Philadelphia, in this game, but Dallas was limited to 16 first downs in the game. They punted 4 times, and strangely enough, in a game in which they lost 41-7, they didn't even attempt a 4th down, which almost feels like the Dallas Cowboys tried to lose the game. 8 penalties on the Cowboys as well was a factor, and honestly, this is just, to me, the headline is just a nice bounce-back game for the Eagles after an embarrassing loss in which I felt like they just lost control of the game. Quarterback thing happened with Hurts and Pickett. Their defense didn't show up in the second half against Washington, and their run game was disappointing in that game. Saquon bounced back, defense bounced back, and the Eagles looked more like what we think the Eagles are, especially considering, the spot for the Eagles and the Cowboys. Like, the Cowboys were coming off a upset of the Bucs, and maybe that had something to play in this role of this game as well. And the Eagles coming off the opposite, right? Being upset by the Commanders despite the quarterback thing. So a big switch this week. The Eagles dominate. The Eagles destroy Dallas. So 41-7, they win, they cover big, and the Eagles take it. Another game that was pretty similar, the Bills beat the Jets 40-14 in a game that a lot of people thought the Jets might cover 10 points. That did not happen. And in fact, this game was at one point, what was the score? Like 33-0? I think at one point it was 33-0, if I'm not mistaken. It might have even been 40-0 at one point. And then the Jets tacked on 2 touchdowns to make it seem a little bit respectable in the end of the game. But this was 40-0, guys. 40-0. And Josh Allen, his stats don't jump off the page, but he certainly strengthened his MVP performance. He had at least 1 rushing touchdown in the game, a few rushing yards, and he had 2 passing touchdowns, 182 yards. This was a big game for the Bills' defense to build some momentum. The Jets, early in the game, they had a couple successful drives, as they typically always do. The Jets' offense actually is capable of moving the ball, actually is capable of stringing together drives. But again, they went for a 4th down in which they failed. It was the 4th and 1. They got stuffed. It didn't work out. Aaron Rodgers turned it over a couple times. One was deflected at the line. Another was intercepted. What else happened? Those were the primary things that turned the tide, as well as the Jets having 16 penalties for 120 yards, a few of them coming early in the game, and the Jets just struggling to cover and keep up with the Bills' ability to throw the ball. This was a disaster for the Jets. They are so poorly coached. They're an embarrassment to football. James Cook had a fine game. The Bills didn't really run the ball all that effectively. Actually, Cook only had 3.5 yards per carry. I don't recall much from Davis. Ty Johnson more so as a receiver. Some guy named Shavers had a 69-yard touchdown. I think it might have been on a screen from Trubisky or like a quick dump off or something. Coleman had an extremely impressive game, the rookie. He had a touchdown in this game that was a wild scramble drill play from Josh Allen, and Coleman high-pointed the ball. He also had a couple of other really nice catches. I thought that Amari Cooper also stood out with a few nice catches and another fantastic catch for a touchdown. It felt like early in this game, every play was not exactly as designed by Buffalo, and it was almost like Buffalo was not really playing with a ultra creative game plan. It was almost like they kind of just went out there and played ball. And Josh Allen was just able to extend plays, find guys open with the extension of plays, rather run, throw, buy enough time to give some jump balls to players, things like that. And that was how the Bills were kind of slicing and dicing the Jets. And meanwhile, their defense was dominating. Their pass rush dominated. A.J. Epinesa forced a safety against Aaron Rodgers. Von Miller had a sack. He was in on the action. They had 4 sacks in total in this game. And like I said, they forced 16 penalties, both offensively and defensively. The Jets fumbled. The Jets had 3 turnovers. So, this was just a complete, absolute dominant performance against the Jets. That was what I was looking for from the Bills. After a bit of a lackluster game against the Patriots, you thought, okay, the Bills might have a response this week because of how the Chiefs looked, how the Ravens looked. It was time and it was turn for the Bills to put up a great performance, and that's exactly what happened. It was 40-0 at one point, right? So, the Bills didn't allow the Jets to run the ball all that well. Breece Hall had 45 yards. The game got out of hand, really. Garrett Wilson was spammed a little bit. So was, as typical, Devontae Adams, but neither really had a great game. Wilson had the more productive game. Like I said, the Bills didn't really run the ball all that well, but I think what was most impressive was the variety of targets that Allen was throwing to. He completed passes to Dalton Kincaid, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins, and Khalil Shakir for more than one, right? So 2 to Kincaid, 3 to Coleman, 3 to Cooper, 3 to Shakir, 2 to Hollins. That is a wide variety of options. I was impressed by that. And then Epinesa, Rousseau, Oliver, the front played really well. Daquan Jones, all of them had a sack. Rousseau had half a sack. Daquan had a half sack. Von Miller had a sack. Ed Oliver had a sack. And Epinesa had a sack. And Matt Milano looked pretty good too, which is also good news. And they were a little bit healthier. So that's good news for Buffalo. Buffalo dominated. That's what I expected. I didn't quite expect 40-14, but it's nice to see that their defense was able to do that to an offense that I think is a little bit better than people think, but a complete disaster of a football team. So those are those games. Then we had another shellacking of Tampa Bay versus Carolina. That was 48-14, and this game was over before it even began. It felt like it might be a little bit of a shootout after the first couple of drives where the Bucs went down and scored a touchdown, and then Adam Thielen also scored a touchdown 17 yards out from Bryce Young, and they exchanged touchdowns. Mike Evans, great opening drive, opening script, as Liam Cohen has been doing all year. Baker finds Evans for a 2-yard touchdown, then Thielen responds, and it's 7-7, and you're like, okay, it's going to be a bit of a shootout. And then the Bucs just proceed to put up, 20 points unanswered. And it becomes 27-7 at halftime. And you're like, this game's already over. And the Bucs just continued to hammer this team. It was 27-14 at halftime. So you're like, oh, maybe the Panthers can make this interesting. Maybe they can backdoor cover or something. Nope. The Bucs utterly dominated the second half, scoring 21 points unanswered, 21-0, including a punt block return for a touchdown. The Bucs dominated. I think most impressively, their defense dominated this game. The Panthers couldn't run the ball. They only had 39 yards rushing. Hubbard was out. That was a factor. Bryce Young struggled on third down. He was 2 for 9, and the Bucs got plenty of pressure on stunts. I was impressed by Kalijah Cansey. I thought he had a really good game. Carolina only had 13 first downs, and it felt like a lot of them came in the first half. And Todd Bowles was just ripping the Panthers up with blitzes and stunts. And Jamel Dean got hurt. Hopefully he's okay. I'm not sure how serious it was. I never really checked. On the other side, the Bucs did whatever they wanted offensively. They had 551 yards and 33 first downs. If you guys do not believe that this is a top 3 to 5 offense in the league, you are mistaken. It is a dominant unit. They are fantastic. They can run the ball. Bucky Irving was phenomenal. He had 113 yards, a couple long ones, couple long screens. McMillan had 2 easy touchdowns, like wide open in the back of the end zone on a post. The other one was a drag route across. He just ran in for a touchdown. Evans dominated with 97 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 8 catches. He's going to look to put up 1,000 next week. I think he needs another 103 yards or something like that, 100 yards, something around there. So The Bucs had 202 rushing yards, 349 passing yards. Baker was perfection. They were 10 for 14 on third down, 27 for 32 was Baker, 5 touchdowns, 359 yards. Freaking unbelievable. They punted one time, which was, I think, at the very end of the game. There was 5 penalties for the Bucs, 4 for Carolina. 41 minutes of possession by the Bucs. This was an absolute belt-to-ass, ass-kicking. The Bucs are legit as a dark horse, in my opinion, because they have an elite offense with one of the 6 best quarterbacks in the league this year, in my opinion. And Mike Evans can be unstoppable. Irving is a real deal Holyfield running back. And they've got 3 starting running backs on their team. McMillan is coming into his own. They're getting production out of like no names, Durham, these random guys like at tight end and wide receiver. And you're like, Liam Cohen is a wizard. Like if Liam Cohen is allowed to leave Tampa Bay this year, that is a huge mistake. Absolutely huge mistake by the Bucs, in my opinion. Like he should be hired as their head coach. They should not allow him to leave that building. He cannot leave that building. He should be a head coach, absolutely. His offense this year has been unbelievable. The last 2 games they won, they scored 40 points. 40. Like, that's crazy to me. They've put up 30 points. I'm just going to go through this. They've put up 30 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. They've put up 30 plus points 8 times this year, Tampa Bay. They're legit. They're legit. They play the Saints next week. If they win the division. They're in. I don't think they've clinched yet. I think if they win, they're in, if I'm not mistaken. Because the Falcons lost, which was huge on Sunday Night Football for the Bucs. But the Falcons, I think, are only 1 game back, yeah. So the Bucs have to take care of business against the Saints, which they should be able to. I think they're like 13.5 or 14-point favorites because they're playing Spencer Rattler and the Saints. But you never know. It's Saints-Bucs. That could be competitive. You never know. But the Saints lost by 15 to the Raiders today. So, yeah, Baker's awesome. The Bucs are awesome. Looking forward to seeing them in the playoffs. I think their offense is a problem for any team. I'm going to check Jamel Dean's status right now because that is a big deal. He injured his knees. Both knees. He already spent 4 weeks on injured reserve with a hamstring. Jordan Whitehead returned. That's good. Antoine Winfield should be back soon for the playoffs. So hopefully Dean's okay. That would complete their secondary. They also picked up Mike Edwards. They picked up Shaq Barrett. So this defense could really come into form by the playoffs potentially. All right, so those are the blowouts. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, which was the game of the week, in my opinion. Vikings took it 27-25. This was a shocking, dominant statement performance in the first half of the football game and through the beginning of the third quarter. The Vikings led at one point 20 to 3. And then they led 27-14. So the Vikings were up 17 and 14 points, 13 points in this game. This was impressive. An all-around effort for the Vikings. They nearly blew the game. Green Bay scored 15 points in the fourth quarter, including a 2-point conversion. That almost made this a game where if the Packers stopped, it made this a game where the Packers stop the Vikings, they get the ball back, and they have a chance to kick a field goal and win the game because of the 2-point conversion that they added to their score. So the Packers put forth an effort in that fourth quarter, but it was too little too late, and it was reminiscent of the game from earlier this year. But with less Jordan Love mistakes and more proper, just good defense, I also felt like Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense was absolutely humming in this game. And the home field was clear. The penalties were a big thing in this game for the Packers. They had 7 penalties, but many of them were offensive penalties, which really hurt them in terms of first down, second down, illegal shifts, false starts, things like that. I think the home field for the Vikings very much helped them. Green Bay, only had 271 yards. They were held to only 104 rushing yards, and they only had 17 first downs. The Vikings defense played great. And I think the biggest thing I could say is they mixed in man coverage more often than usual. They played more contested, tight, aggressive press man coverage against this Packers receiving core, and they blitzed quite a bit. And it felt to have a good impact against this Packers team. And it was very reminiscent of the Lions game in Detroit earlier this year, where Detroit was really able to stifle the Packers and make things very challenging for Jordan Love by blitzing and playing a lot of man. And until the Lions really got hurt in the secondary, they were able to hold, the Packers fairly well. I think that the Vikings just have better personnel in regards to their secondary. I think they have better overall defensive coaching under Brian Flores, more dynamic range of blitzes, and they have a better overall just defense, talent-wise. And I thought, guys like Gilmore played exceptional, and it was a good game plan. It was a good switch up because the Vikings are a very heavy zone blitz team, and the Packers typically do well against that sort of look. The Vikings did get shredded quite a bit in the fourth quarter when they went to a lot of zone and they tried not to give up a lot of big plays. There were spots where they played man coverage on like third down, high leverage situations, but Romeo Doubs specifically was able to win on some of those plays and get first downs. Love also, I felt like, was rather a little erratic throwing the ball in certain situations and also took bad sacks and was just a little panicky with the pressure in front of him, which I thought this was probably the most exposed I've seen the Packers offensive line in any game this year. I thought this was one of the worst games they've played as a protection unit. The Packers, nonetheless, were 8 for 14 on third down, which kept them in the game late. That was where they were really good, was they wouldn't get anything on first or second, and then Love would complete a pass for like 8 yards or 9 yards or 10 yards for a first down, something like that, right? The Vikings did have 3 sacks in this game. They also, weirdly enough, they didn't force a interception from Love as kind of erratic as he was. And I would also say that Josh Jacobs, he fumbled, so that was a big thing. That was early in the game. The Packers actually drove the length of the field early in the first quarter, and the Packers looked like the better team like right from the start for like the first 10 minutes, but they fumbled in Viking territory, if I'm not mistaken. And then they also failed a fourth down in which Love just missed read. He was just a little off. So those were huge plays in the game, and I felt like they should have probably kicked the field goal on that fourth down. And if they did, at the end of the game, in hindsight, they might have won the game because it might have been 28-27, and they could have won the game on the 2-point instead of, or whatever. Maybe the game would have went to overtime regardless. But yeah, I mean, this was a game that the Vikings, I thought, outcoached the Packers. I thought they were more disciplined, especially in terms of penalties. I thought Darnold outplayed Love. Like, Darnold was throwing piss missiles left and right, bullets, dots, whatever you may say. He was 33 for 43 in this game for 377 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw a bad pick, and he probably should have thrown multiple picks. He also did almost fumble the ball. It was very close, but it was reversed, okay? It was called a fumble and then reversed. It was going forward, okay? But there was many opportunities in the third and fourth quarter where Darnold was throwing some dicey passes, and I felt like O'Connell was putting him in a lot of difficult positions to succeed and a lot of really high leverage spots where Darnold was in that third, fourth quarter, early fourth quarter, late third quarter stage, he wasn't really playing as well, and the Vikings offense was kind of slowing down, and the Packers defense was making plays. Packers, first of all, were stopping the run of Aaron Jones and Cam Akers, which was a huge reason they were able to come back. Aaron Jones only had 3.9 yards per carry, and Cam Akers, I don't think it was any better. And then they also had a few plays where Darnold was incomplete on some high leverage situations, or it could have been picked or something like that. And that was what was able the Packers to come back in this game. Also, the Vikings missed a field goal that was huge. It hit the post. That was huge. That also enabled the Packers to kind of get back in the game as well. The kicker, Richard, was not very good in this game from my perspective. I think he missed 2 field goals, and he nearly missed 3, but there was a penalty that was highly suspect against the Packers for an offside. I thought it was kind of bullshit. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was a bad penalty call. I didn't think he was offside. Even Tom Brady kind of didn't think he was offside. But I will say about Tom Brady, he was praising Sam Darnold, and I understand why. Darnold was excellent. His pocket presence was great. His composure was fantastic. His accuracy was beautiful. I mean, his ball placement was near perfection. And the receivers, Addison played well. He had a beautiful double move for a touchdown. Jefferson played well. Naylor played fantastic. He had the early touchdown, 81 yards. The last series of the game, good play calling by O'Connell. 3 play action rollouts to the right, one of them to the left, in which they were all completed, which helped them confirm the game and win the game and force the Packers to use their timeouts and still win the game. And that's what Sam Darnold's been doing all year, man. He's been getting this team in front, and he's been securing the game in the fourth quarter, and he just continues to do that time after time after time. He didn't really use his legs much in this game, but I thought he really functioned well, and I thought the Vikings offensive line was unbelievable. I thought this was like the best game they've played all year. I thought they protected Darnold really, really well, and he had a lot of time to make throws, but every single time he had a chance to make throws, he was throwing a missile, and it was on the money. Love, I think one of the critiques of his game, in my opinion, is his erratic accuracy. And I think a lot of that comes down to the way he throws the ball and the mechanics of his ball. I think he can make a lot of high-level throws, but he also misses some gimmies, and he also is just a little bit more off than somebody like Darnold. Darnold has much more precise ball placement, and that was shown in this game. And I think the Vikings forced Love to make a lot more tight window throws than the Vikings were forced to make against the Packers, right? Darnold can afford to maybe miss a little bit because the Packers were playing a lot more zone and they were a lot more soft in their coverage. But I think the Packers, end of the day, Christian Watson and Jair Alexander were huge misses in this game. They both didn't play. And the reason I say Watson was huge, because the Vikings would not play man coverage to the level that they did against Christian Watson, because Watson is, schematically and also from a statistical standpoint, the best separator and man coverage beater on the Packers. He's also the fastest vertical player on their team. He runs a 4.28. So he's scary. And when he's out there in man coverage, I don't think there's anybody on the Vikings that can stay with him like that. So that allowed the Vikings to play a lot more man and be aggressive in coverage. Jaden Reed is their best receiver, and he's somebody that's more effective against zone than man. He's almost a lot like Deebo Samuel in my mind. And then on the other side, Alexander not being out there to slow down Justin Jefferson in key moments and or cover, Addison was huge. So they missed their perimeter playmakers, and I felt like the perimeter playmakers of the Vikings played much, much better. I also thought that Matt LaFleur was not really composed in this game. I thought he lost his cool quite a bit. It wasn't his best showing. That happens. It's okay. I'm not going to piss on him or anything, but I thought that Brian Flores was fantastic, and I thought the Vikings overall won this game because Sam Darnold was awesome. So, yeah, I think the Vikings are awesome, legit. I think their defense, if they can continue to do this against great opponents, they can beat anybody in this league because their offense, man, I'm telling you, is pretty sweet, especially if they can play at home throughout the playoffs. That's going to be dangerous. So I don't think, if you're an NFC, I would almost rather go to Detroit than go to Minnesota. I think this team is way better at home, the Vikings. I really do. I would much rather play Detroit in Detroit, honestly. I don't really feel like Detroit's home field, as good as it is. I don't feel like it's a huge factor because I think Detroit's defense is much worse. And I think the Vikings benefit defensively from their home crowd, so especially with all the penalties. So those are my thoughts on that game. Was there anything from like a clock management standpoint? I thought it was very odd from like Kevin O'Connell's perspective that he was so aggressive with like 5 to 6 minutes left in the game. He was throwing the ball a lot and he wasn't really using the clock very efficiently. That's something to look forward to in the playoffs when these games really, really, really matter. But the Vikings have a chance now. They play the Lions next week. If whoever wins gets the 1 seed in the NFC, that's going to be a huge game. I'm looking forward to it. I almost think the Vikings match up exceptionally well with the Lions. I think that their perimeter playmakers against those cornerbacks, their offensive line, the way they're playing against that pass rush, and then also Flores' ability to scheme pressure and stop the run against the Lions should come in handy. So I'm looking forward to that game quite a bit. The final game was Sunday Night Football, which typically I do at the start, but I guess, it's good to finish with it because we had the Drew Lock experience today. 30-24, the Commanders took it. This was an exciting game. It was in overtime. It went to overtime. And Jaden Daniels, once again, ice in his veins, just like one Drew Lock came through. And, like I've said many times, I'm not the biggest Daniels guy. And I say I'm not the biggest Daniels guy because in comparison to many others that slurp him, I'm not quite on that level. But I still think he is good. And I think this season, he would be just inside my top 10 quarterbacks of this season. So I'm a believer. I also feel like these type of moments are what justify why people like him so much, because he is a gamer. He comes through in these moments, no matter if it's pretty or not. I think in this game, he struggled quite a bit in the first half, and he definitely struggled a bit as a passer throughout most of the game until the fourth quarter. But as a runner, he was dynamic. He was difficult. That is the best word to describe it for the Falcons. And he was dangerous. And I think Jaden Daniels' ability to run and convert first downs into second and threes, make third down and sevens, first downs, fourth down and ones, first downs. And the Falcons just had no ability to adjust there. I think the Falcons also lost this game because of their idiot head coach who messed up the clock management situation. So the headline for Washington is Daniels once again being a gamer and coming through. I was significantly unimpressed by the Commanders in the first half. I thought they were awful. They were losing 17-7. Their defense looked pathetic. They could not stop Bijan Robinson, who is an absolute beast. But I would also say that Raheem Morris lost this game for the Falcons, and that would be the headline if I was a Falcons fan. Because late in this game, there was 15 seconds, approximately 15 seconds, lost on the clock by Raheem Morris because he did not call a timeout in the game. So the game was 24-24, Falcons-Commanders. The Commanders were stopped. The Falcons got the ball back, and the Falcons had a chance to kick a field goal and win in regulation. And at their own, I'm looking at it right now on my computer. At their own 19-yard line, Michael Penix, with 40 seconds remaining and 2 timeouts, throws a completion of 25 yards to Darnell Mooney. At the 45-yard line, where Darnell Mooney goes down, 6 seconds are taken off the clock. Remember, 2 timeouts, 40 seconds. 6 seconds are taken off the clock. That means there's 34 seconds remaining. Any normal, competent NFL head coach would call a timeout. I was yelling at the TV, timeout, 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 timeout. And this is the most, interesting parts of NFL games to me nowadays, is these clock management situations, and especially when coaches don't understand them. So at the 45-yard line, that's a 25-yard completion in which your entire offense, your fat-ass offensive linemen, all have to run 25 yards up. You have to get a play called. You have to get everyone situated. Make sure you're not going to false start or, illegal shift or anything like that. So by the time they got to the line without a timeout, the Falcons did not snap the ball until the ball is not in the hands of Michael Penix until 16 seconds left in the game. 16. So they went from 34 seconds where they could have called a timeout and they'd still have one in their back pocket. They lost 18 seconds by the time Penix got the ball in his hands. They were still able to get into field goal range, right? Penix then, actually, the play immediately following, Penix misses a corner route to, I think, Mooney again. He was open by about 5 yards. It was a bad throw, and Penix had many of those sprays throughout the day, which is one of my problems with his game in this one. But I think that was caused because of the quick snap, the hurry, and the lack of understanding of, the lack of composure in that moment of, mechanics. And I think he was hurried, and I think if he were more composed, they would have called a timeout. I think he hits that throw. I honestly do. Because I just think he would have been more relaxed. So they had 2 timeouts with 12 seconds left in the game. That really doesn't do you a lot. You only have 12 seconds. So Raheem Morris lost this game because the kick had to be 57 yards, and you've got your backup kicker. Younghoe Koo is out. You have to factor that in. You have to understand where you have to get, where you have to get to kick the field goal, right? And these were situations that the Falcons were excellent at early in the year, and I think it was because of Cousins. But here you've got to help your rookie quarterback out. This is not Penix's fault. You've got to call a timeout. So, terrible clock management from Raheem Morris. I thought his defense played admirably for about 3 quarters, and then they kind of got gassed towards the end, where the Commanders scored 17 points in the fourth and overtime, which is what they've been doing regularly. Ultimately, Washington finishes with 29 first downs and 412 yards. They had 216 rushing yards. Daniels ended up with 227 through the air, 3 touchdowns through the air. He did throw a pretty awful pick to Christian Ellis. And I thought, like I said, I thought he kind of was mid as a passer in this game, if not below average until the fourth quarter. And then in the fourth quarter, he was really good, and his rushing was excellent. Honestly, I thought he was going to get hurt at one point. He was taking a lot of hits. He was running every play at one point, it felt like. He took 5 sacks in this game, and in the first half, even Ultra was saying, man, this guy's taking a lot of bad sacks. So between the sacks and, some of the misreads and the coverages and things like that, I thought he was really struggling when he was dropping back, and Atlanta had no ability to stop him as a rusher. On the other side, Michael Penix was 19 for 35, 223, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I thought part of the reason the Falcons lost is because they kind of abandoned the running game. Bijan had 17 carries for 90 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. There's no reason he shouldn't have had 25 carries in this game. He was dominating this game, and he looked fantastic. I thought his vision, his cutting, his ability to hit the holes and wait for his linemen, his patience was incredible. Drake London did have a good game, but it was pretty inefficient. He had 7 catches on 13 targets for 106 yards. Penix just missed a lot of throws in this game, and that's the biggest thing I would be worried about with Penix was his inaccuracy. He was very inaccurate for a variety of reasons in this game. Kyle Pitts actually showed up pretty good in this game. He had a touchdown that tied the game at 24-24. He had a couple nice completions in this game as well. Washington, Brian Robinson was fine, 13 for 60. Rodriguez played really well. He was a big part. Zach Ertz was super clutch. He had 6 catches for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he had 3 of them on the overtime drive, 3 catches on the overtime drive. Washington also was 3 for 3 on 4th down. Atlanta was 2 for 2 on 4th down, so 5 for 5 in total in the game, which was a lot of fun to watch. Atlanta's defense, though, had 5 sacks, and the concern has been pass rush all year. They had 5 sacks. Washington also had 13 penalties. They took a ton of offensive penalties, holdings, a lot of holdings. They couldn't block the Falcons in the first half, the first 3 quarters. That was a huge problem. Washington's O-line is a problem going into the playoffs. And then defensively, they had a lot of holds as well. So there's a lot of holding out there. And that, the refs were definitely on the Falcons' side. It was kind of odd. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the game. Like Washington, I felt like was the better team entering the game. I feel like they're the better team post-game, but I actually feel a little bit less confident about Washington entering the playoffs now after watching this game, because I thought we saw a lot of flaws with Washington, which I know we know they're a flawed team, but it felt like they were just clutchy and grabby defensively. They couldn't stop the run consistently. And then on the other side, they were kind of lackluster to start the game. And if you're playing an Eagles and they're up on you, big with Jalen Hurts, they're able to run the ball out, you're going to lose against that pass rush. And the Falcons got after them. So McLaurin was very quiet in this game, in my opinion, which was odd. Zacchaeus had a really good game. He did have a crucial drop, but I thought he played really well. Anything else stand out? Not really. I mean, Bobby Wagner, I thought, had a good game. Christian Ellis played great. I thought the front overall, Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Matt Judon, I thought they played pretty good until the end. A.J. Terrell had an amazing game. I would say that. A.J. Terrell locked down Terry McLaurin. That was one of the best games I've ever seen him play, in all honesty. And Atlanta, they tried to win this game going 2 for 10 on third down. That's not really good. You're not really going to do that. So there it is, guys. My review for Week 17. A little bit shorter this time, less games to discuss. But let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below. Spike the like button and subscribe. It's Mitch. Deuces.